So good afternoon, everybody. Sounds like everybody's had a really good day, and thank you for inviting me along today. I have to admit, I feel a little bit of an imposter here. There's some great knowledge in the room and individuals in this room that do incredible things, and then there's me. But what I can share is a little bit about the Cabrach Trust and about our Discovery Trail. And about our journey, our challenges and our growing commitment to nature recovery. But before I go on to that, just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about what makes the Cabrach special. For those unfamiliar to the Cabrach, I don't know how many people know about it. It's a remote upland settlement. We border the Cairngorms National Park. And the place is stunning landscape, deep history, whisky heritage rooted in its history. But like many rural communities, it's faced depopulation, economic challenges, and has a need for regeneration. So the Cabrach Trust is a community regeneration trust, and we're now a proud custodian of the Cabrach Distillery Community Interest Company. So the distillery has just started producing whisky. It's owned by the community, and the profits in 6 years' time will all be ploughed back into the trust for regeneration aims. So our mission is to rejuvenate the community by providing houses, restoring historic buildings and creating accessible outdoor spaces for health and well-being, and fostering a sense of place for locals and visitors alike. So to achieve this, we have our education programmes, rural skills and wellbeing programmes, as well as some of our key community events like our annual picnic and games, which we brought back after an 80-year hiatus 3 years ago, so 4 years ago. So this year will be our 4th year of the games. At the heart of our work is revitalising the land and reconnecting with people and nature. And while nature recovery is not our core expertise, we recognise it's a responsibility of ours and work in collaboration with partners such as EDF Ranger Service, River Devon Trust, Atlantic Salmon Trust, and pretty much anybody else that wants to work with us or wants to take on the responsibility of working with me. We work to this theory of change. Go back. We work with this theory of change, and there's a variety of inputs from different capitals, finance, human, natural, and our partnerships, and the outputs that we expect from those is visitor destination, more people come in to live and work in the Cabrach, and improved visitor infrastructure in the Cabrach. So that's kind of the principles that we work to. I'm kind of flip-flopping now. But it's a bit of a balancing act. So the Trust owns Inverharrock Farm, which has been traditionally grazed by our tenant farmer. It's a 4th generation sheep farmer in the Cabrach. And when I joined the Trust 5 years ago, a week before lockdown, which actually my anniversary was yesterday, the entire farm was actively grazed. And the riverbanks of the River Devon and Blackwater were significantly eroded due to sheep movement, for example. So the Trust recognising the need for change, we reclaimed a portion of the land, took back some of our tenanted land and created the Discovery Trails. So the trails started out as being a 2-kilometre trail, all ability trail for anybody to access at any time, day or night, and to walk around the edge of the farm, down to the River Devon and along the Blackwater. we did hope to be able to connect the longer distance paths created by the Ranger Service, but sadly landowner permissions prevented us from doing this. However, we've recently extended the trail, we won't be beaten, to create a circular route, and now there's plans for the next step for that as well. So creating the trail was not just about providing access, it was about fostering an appreciation for the environment too, and taking steps towards nature recovery. And as I say, that's not something that we can do on our own. We're a tiny team. Up until a couple of months ago, there was just myself and a chief exec. We now have part-time admin, so that solves the world issues. And gives us loads of time to do everything. But we're really lucky to have our neighbours and collaborators on our doorstep with the Ranger Service and, as I say, other people within the area. So we had an opportunity to put in the Discovery Trail, but then think about what else we could put in that helps with nature recovery. So we developed two ponds, two nature ponds with the pond dipping platforms there. A wildflower meadow, which is sort of, you can see here, which is reportedly thriving, thanks to Stephen for telling me that. And we also planted 3,000 broadleaf trees mainly along the River Devon, and kind of heading down towards the banks of the Devon. We built a nature hide, which is this amazing building here. And that's hosted a whole host of things, from school groups, storytelling evenings, and even the occasional whisky festival. We've seen increased biodiversity. We haven't done any, we did surveys at the very start of the projects. We haven't done anything after we're like year 3 of the project. Haven't done anything with anybody at the moment to see whether or not we have increased. It's just gone by eye, and the rangers coming and saying it's looking all right. But it's incredibly rewarding to witness some of the changes that we do see, and some of the flowers that come up. Had huge pushback on the wildflower meadow. It'll never work, it's too wet, it's too cold, it's too this, it's too that, you can't do this, you can't do that. But we've done it. And it seems to have worked. It gave us an opportunity to do something different. It gave us an opportunity to work with Doug and the Owls group to be able to use traditional scything to bring people out to use scythes. It just opens up lots of opportunities as well as doing what it needs to do, and that's nature recovery. But there's a key learning point here. These projects have been fantastic and are and continue to be, but managing and maintaining them is something that, when trustees get on board that it's great, let's do this, don't then think about how it's going to be managed and maintained. And again, I keep harping on about the support and the guidance that we get. It is invaluable, and we don't thank people enough, I don't think. We also get the gentle nagging now and again from Stephen, but that's to be expected, I guess. But yeah, there's lots that we can do, there's lots that we want to do, but there's also lots of work that goes along with it. So in the winter of 2023, we lost a significant portion of riverbank due to flooding and strong river flows. So just before Christmas, we undertook a major effort to protect and restore it by using willow spilling. The project spanned about 60 metres of the riverbank and was made possible again through great collaboration with a number of organisations, and the poor EDF rangers, they get roped into everything, don't they? So there we were, December, freezing cold, up to our nicky-nacky noos in water, repairing a willow, repairing the riverbank with willow. Which again is great. We need to backfill it, we need to finish it, but I am not getting in the river in this weather. But that, you know, we've already seen signs of improvement there, where you can see the river's been bringing down debris and it's being caught in the willow. Yeah, it's hugely encouraging to somebody that hasn't got a clue what they're doing. So future plans, and building on this momentum, we're working on, thanks to funding from Murray Can, we're planting nature corridors along the old school hall garden and community centre. We want to enhance the perimeter of the ponds with more planting, so that we create more areas for wildlife around the ponds. And we're going to increase willow planting along the riverbank to kind of stem some more of that erosion. And quite excitingly, we've just signed up to do another 8 hectares of planting of native broadleaf planting, which also gives us an opportunity to extend the trail a little bit further out into Inverharrock, and create a boardwalk over some of the flood area. So there's some of our big projects ahead. And yeah, funding, it's just great that there's funding out there to enable us to do that. Lessons learned and reflections, oh my God, there's like reams of it.
You've got 2 minutes to tell us.
Okay, so it was well timed, wasn't it? Through all of this, one of the biggest lessons learned that is small community-led actions, they really do make a difference, but only if you've got other people that you can work with. Regeneration and conservation don't happen overnight. And sometimes, I forgot to put trustees, sometimes our board feel progress is slow. But then when you step back and look at what you've achieved over the past few years, the change is undeniable. We've also learnt, and I've harped on about it, that collaboration is key. And without the expertise and generosity of our partners, none of what we've created would be possible. Their support's been invaluable. I was at Join the Dots conference yesterday with TSI Murray, and that theme, doesn't matter what sector you're from, that theme runs all the way through, that you need to join the dots, otherwise it doesn't work. So here's your chance to get involved. So we're always looking for enthusiastic partners and volunteers to help us enhance our special place. And we are always open to suggestions of how we might do things better or how things would work better. So the invitation is open for anybody to get in touch and get involved. And there's my details there. Did I do it in time?
Yes, I'm from the Natural Environment team in Aberdeenshire Council, and I wanted just to share with you a little bit about a project that we've been working on, a partnership project that we've been working on called the Aberdeenshire Sma Wids scheme, or for those not familiar with the Doric, small woodlands. So this is a scheme, kind of the background to this is pretty much familiar to many of you, I'm sure. In the context of these twin challenges that we've been talking about today, we're looking at how we can increase tree planting, how we can encourage new woodland creation, on areas, particularly in areas where there's been a lack of tree cover or there are barriers to that woodland creation. And that conversation's been going on for a number of years. National planting targets, whether we're meeting them or not, and various different initiatives and schemes to try and encourage that and move that forward. Obviously, there's been a bit of a change in the last few years when we've had a number of different extreme weather events, and we've seen a lot of tree loss in the northeast of Scotland, and that's kind of made people maybe a little bit more aware of it, more conscious of the need for additional tree planting. Obviously, there's also an increase in tree disease, and we've seen, a further spread of Dutch elm disease and the beginnings of ash dieback as well in this area. So in a sense, it's a project that is not unique to this area, and lots of people have been talking about it. There's always an inciting moment in any one project, and for us in this one, it happened with the chap in the photograph here, if you can see, when, as was the Prince of Wales, Duke of Rothesay, His Majesty the King, came to visit Harrow Country Park after Storm Owen. And following that conversation and that visit, he asked for a group of people to come together to have a forum about how can we get more trees planted. And we were looking particularly in the northeast of Aberdeenshire, and particularly in the Buchan area, where there's an agricultural, I guess the landscape is mainly agricultural. And so we had a fantastic roundtable discussion with landowners from that area, as well as a wide range of organisations and agencies, talking about initiatives that have happened in the past, the success of them, about different barriers that people had or felt, whether they were perceived barriers or real barriers. I'm conscious that, I think it was Alison said this morning about not thinking about all the barriers, but to set in a vision. Our vision was, let's get some more trees in the ground. And I think pretty much everyone round the table that day felt that if we could get the trees in the ground, people would see the value and the benefit that they brought to the landscape, to the biodiversity, to the communities, to the farm businesses. But how do we get over that hurdle of actually getting the trees in the ground? There's so many barriers to it. People are hesitant about giving over big areas of their land and effectively locking that up into woodland, particularly with uncertainty about funding, particularly for a lot of folk. If they're coming to the end they're coming to a retirement age and they're about to pass their farms on to their families, and they're a bit nervous about how that goes. So various different barriers, a lot of issues to do with regulation and reporting, and what happens if the trees you plant fail, and how do we establish them. So we thought, how can we design a scheme that basically got the trees in the ground and then let them do their job. So we put together a little pilot project based on the North Ugie and South Ugie catchments, with partners ourselves, Aberdeenshire Council, Scottish Forestry, Scottish Woodlands, Woodland Trust and Scottish Wildlife Trust, and with a number of landowners, 6 landowners. There are 7 on the table here, but that's because Addon Country Park is Aberdeenshire's. And what we designed was a little scheme whereby we would effectively do all of the groundwork, and the landowners, all they had to do was plant the trees. So we would do the scheme design, we would do the procurement of the trees and all of the necessary protection, we would deliver the stuff to the site, we would not come back to check up, and we would come back to check up, but we're not going to come back to check up to see there's only 160 trees and you need 170 or whatever. Design a scheme that was very, very low touch, very basic, very simple. So Scottish Forestry provided their woodland officers as their consultants, and they came out and basically sat around the kitchen table with the farmers, chatted about their land, their business, what they'd done before, the sort of planting they had. They had a walk around their site, they identified some areas of ground, and then together they co-designed a scheme. Each scheme varied slightly. They were all planted with native species. They were all designed to enhance the landscape and the biodiversity of the site. And crucially, they were all under 0.25 hectares in size. And the reason for that is that that's underneath both the Scottish Forestry cut-offs for grant funding and also under the Woodland Trust grant funding. So it was areas of land, pockets of land that were underutilised or marginal land where we could get a few trees in, and we could see that in that little bit would begin to make a difference. It's probably quite hard to see on this map, but there are some little red circles which identify where the sites were. So they were within these North Ugie, South Ugie catchments, and quite a number of them were on adjacent land. So we actually had schemes that began to make a little bit of a network along that water there. Most of the schemes in the pilot were riparian planting. So again, we're looking at, beginning to build up that network and that corridor through there. I'd love to be able to give you some pictures in a few years' time when it's not just tree tubes, but it's actually trees that you can see as well in the scheme. So basically, in summary, we created this simple scheme where there was really no paperwork, where it was all based on a conversation at the farm, round the kitchen table, designed the scheme with consultancy and support from Scottish Forestry. The trees were provided by Scottish Woodlands. All the protection measures, which in this case was trees, tubes and stakes, were paid for by contributions from the other partners. Aberdeenshire did all the administration, the procurement, organised all that sort of stuff. The landowners had to plant the trees. That was their requirement. They had to do that. They had to organise that. And that was quite an interesting aspect of it, because what we discovered was that people really wanted to do that. They wanted to have ownership of the schemes that were on their ground. They didn't want to just pass that off to somebody else. It was their land. They were the custodians of it. They wanted to make sure the trees were planted. As I say, it was all native species. We planted about 4,000 trees across the 12 Sma Wids that were created. A lot of it was riparian, so you can see there's a high amount of willow and alder. Taking on board all of the costings, and this wasn't a grant scheme. The landowners weren't given money; they were just given the trees and the necessary equipment. We worked out that it cost about £2,500 per Sma Wid. So that was including all the woodland consultancy, the procurement, all the materials. It doesn't include the planting costs because that was borne by the landowner themselves. Some of them planted it themselves, some of them planted it with their staff, some of them got their kids to plant it during the Easter holidays. Various different ways. So the lessons learned from this scheme. Basically, it was a simple scheme, was really effective. It was really effective not to have a huge amount of regulation and paperwork to go through, first of all. The woodland advice was invaluable. That was a really interesting point. There was really a feeling of a lack of knowledge and a lack of experience and expertise, I guess, in woodland management within the farmers that we were working with. They were keen to learn more about it, but it was just not something they'd engaged with. And so that probably explains why there was a hesitancy to take up any bigger schemes or any more traditional planting schemes within their farm. And so actually being able to chat with a woodland advisor and to walk around and to get feedback, and that was really helpful. Centralised ordering and delivery, again, was key. They didn't have to faff about finding sources and dealing with all that. The trees and the materials just arrived. A couple of things to learn. Obviously, just due to the timing of the project, due to the timing of the pilot, the trees weren't delivered until kind of the end of March, beginning of April, which was far too late from a planting perspective and far too late from a farmer's perspective. So obviously, going forward, we would need to make sure that came at kind of autumn time to allow us that time over the winter period. Folks also asked for support for planting, and that varied from some people who were keen to have squads, maybe a squad come in and do it, and other folk who wanted just a bit more, almost sort of training and advice on, how to plant a tree and what spacing to plant it at, that sort of thing. And then also about trees needing maintenance. So obviously we wanted the trees to get in the ground, but we also wanted them to establish. And when they got planted, beginning of April time, then very quickly there was a need for maintenance, for weeding, etc. So we've taken that on board and built in that aspect of it into the scheme. So our pilot just enabled us to show that it was a simple targeted scheme would actually get trees in the ground in areas where there hadn't been before. And we are now developing this. We're just in the process of registering the scheme with Oscar, the charity regulator, and we're hoping to roll that out to develop 40 new Sma Wids across the next 2 years. We're widening the area out slightly, so the eligible area will be the historic area of Buchan, so east of the Devon, north of the Eithne. And while most of the pilot projects were riparian woodland, we will include other projects as well that might be suitable and appropriate depending on what woodland advice in between the landowner and the consultant. So small copses, field boundary trees, some hedgerows as well. A variety of different projects, and it can be any manner of that. Again, they'll be under 0.25 hectares for any woodland site, and the hedgerows would be under 100 metres in length, because again, that keeps us underneath the existing grant schemes. Obviously, there's projects that are not eligible. That'll come out through the discussion and woodland advice that's provided, but there will be no planting on carbon-rich soils, deep heat on any ecological valuable grassland or wetland habitats, no planting within private gardens or on archaeological sites, or where there's a condition of planning consent or felling permission. We're intending appointing a project officer who will effectively oversee all of the aspects of the scheme, doing everything apart from the initial note of interest that the landowner would submit and the planting. So the project officer will meet with the parties and discuss it. They'll co-design the scheme. They'll arrange all the procurement of the trees and whatever protection measures are needed. We're also going to have a tool library for planting so that landowners can borrow the necessary tools for planting the trees. We're developing some training resources as well for various different stages of the process. And we're including in support for weeding for 2 years. So the first 2 years of the planting, there will be weeding. Depending on what type of farm it is, will depend on what type of weeding that is. The landowner's main responsibility is to plant the trees. Obviously, we want them to feed back to us. We want them to maintain them. We want that to be, we want that to go forward. But the main thing is we want them to get the trees in the ground and to see the effect that they'll have. In order for us to do this, we're looking for £100,000 over the next 2 years to enable us to deliver 40 new Sma Wids. We've got about a third of that already committed, and about another third that we think is pretty much committed. So we're hoping that we'll have that in place by May time, so that we can appoint a project officer and we can start that scheme promotion and that initial discussion over the summer months, allowing us to have the trees delivered ready at the start of the planting season. Obviously, this will run for 2 years, so we're just at that development stage at the moment. So we're really excited. We think that the pilot has given us a really good justification of the fact that it's worked, that we've got some trees in the ground, we've got some landowners engaged, we've built that confidence up in planting trees and looking at things in a slightly different way, and just trying to sort of subvert the system by doing stuff pretty simply. And let's see what would happen if we just gave people some trees and see what happened. So yeah, that's where we're at. Thank you.
Yeah, so as was just said, my name is Nancy Kennils. I'm Gordans University Sustainability Manager. For anybody who's been looking during the day or is squinting now, yes, they are penguins on my t-shirt. I thought it would be quite a good thing to wear today. What I'm going to be talking to you about is our Waterside Farm. This is a 55-acre site that is opposite our campus on the other side of the river. And effectively, we are restoring it to its natural state after many, many years of human intervention. And we're also going to be enhancing the carbon storage capacity of the land as well. We're doing this in partnership with the Habitat people. I think David Hunter, some of you may know him, he's spoken at a lot of these type of things before. The project really is possible thanks to a £100,000 donation from the SRM Foundation. So that's £50,000 for per year over 2 years. We made that connection through our alumni and fundraising team, so that's just pretty much what's been able to bring this project to life. And another huge part of it as well is the local community and our RGU community as well. A lot of the work that you're going to hear about is done by volunteers, and without them, again, it just wouldn't have been possible. To understand the what we're doing and the why, initially I'm going to have to take you back around about 300 years. So we're going to go to the mid-1700s. And on this map here, the bit that we're talking about, Waterside Farm, is contained in this red rectangle. And if you look closely, you can see it's a two-stream river. So sometime between the mid-1700s and then later on in the 1800s, this western entrance here was actually blocked off in order to control flooding and then also make the land appropriate for agriculture and farming. There we are. So that's then what it looked like around about the mid-1800s. Now, at the time, they only blocked that western entrance. So something quite interesting about this bit is when it floods, and it does, it actually floods upriver instead. In the 18th and 1900s, this would have been quite beneficial for the farmers because that sediment would have then been refertilizing the land. And then that's kind of what's shaped our project moving forward. Now, this is what the area looks like. That red rectangle from a few slides ago is now the red area over here. RGU campus is then this purple bit just to the side. And then this blue bit down the bottom, that's known as the island. And that is actually another area of land that RGU owns. At the moment, nothing is happening with it, but it might be subject to its own biodiversity project in the future. So RGU, we purchased the land in 2006. Before we had, farming had then stopped. The farmhouse there is all derelict, and the land had actually been placed into a forestry grant scheme. At the time, people thought this was the right thing to do, but pretty much they were just planting loads and loads of trees. And in the last 20 years, half of those trees have now actually died. You've gone from a farmland, trying to put a woodland into a farmland, into what is actually a natural floodplain. So a lot of the trees just couldn't establish themselves, and the ones that have managed to establish themselves are leaching carbon out of the ground. And when we bought the land, there were many considerations for what to do with it. There was sports fields, solar farms, and then also car parks. Feasibility studies took place. This was not going to be suitable. Any costs with this type of thing was going to just be astronomical and completely prohibitive. And also, as I said, it floods. So I don't know about you, but I don't really ever want to park my car underwater. The Habitat people then got in touch. That was around about 22, 23. They were doing some surveys in the area. And from their sampling, we found that that western end, the bit that had been blocked, was actually had very high carbon storage content. And this information is kind of then what shaped the project moving forward. So rather than develop the land or kind of exploit it for our gain, we decided then we'd actually use it to kind of enhance this carbon capturing properties and then the biodiversity that would then come with it, those benefits. So yeah, like I said, a lot of it is then done with the local community as well to make sure that what we were doing kind of aligned with the values of the people nearby. A lot of people care about this area, and we held a few listening events, and we have volunteer sessions that local community and RGU get involved in as well. So we're really trying to create these partnerships and that sense of like pride and ownership in this land. So what are we doing? Like I said before, half of the trees that were planted have died. That's through waterlogging and also deer grazing. What we are looking to do is kind of move any of the saplings that have managed to survive into a different area, because later on we're going to be reflooding that area and bringing it back to the reed beds and the wetlands. This picture just up at the top here, you'll probably know, it's a tree tube just there. That plant is actually around about 20 years old and it is less than 1/2 metre tall. So they just can't grow there effectively. In a room of this calibre, I'm sure I don't need to tell you what plants you've got on the screen here. Himalayan balsam and Japanese knotweed, very prevalent in the area, especially kind of up and down the river. Like, we are now working with the community as far as Kuta to try to deal with this in, you know, not just kind of in our own area. So when we get rid of these, and when we can then move all the plants that are going to survive to a better area, we'll then look to kind of put in some native species instead. Okay, so this whole project has actually given us a really great opportunity for engagement and partnerships. Like I said, a lot of people nearby are very, very interested. We have these volunteer sessions that is from staff, students attend, and also lots of local people. I went over one time and it was around the exam period and there were students there and they just said it was just a really great chance for them to, I think someone said before, like, get out their head, you know, kind of disconnect, be doing something purposeful and good, a nice day outside and with the head out of the books. But also, it's a great asset for us in terms of our research. So creating those partnerships across the university as well. In order to reflood these plains, we're going to put a pump in to then bring the water in. So we have our School of Computing, Engineering and Technology that we'll then be working with. From our Pharmacy and the Sciences School, the area of land is right next to the South Teesside Road. And somebody is doing a PhD looking at how tyre particles then affect the water. It's very, very soluble in the water, but it can affect the salmon and the life in the stream. So we have this river right there. We're going to be reflooding the water. Literally, the students can then get, you know, real-time sampling data from this area that we then have. In terms of the tree tubes, you can see here that's a number that we've removed. It's about 10,000 altogether. We're looking to repurpose any that could still be used. And for the ones that are a bit damaged, we have our Grey School of Art, or, you know, if they can kind of repurpose it in some way to kind of create that cycle of going round. So yeah, one of the things I would say from kind of speaking with people today is that I feel like a lot of us are doing very similar projects or are facing very, very similar kind of issues. So it would really just be great to keep in touch and kind of learn from each other from this and kind of help each other's projects move along. Thank you.
Yeah. What a fascinating day. What a lot of different areas, topics and so on. It's great to see the passion that people have brought to their subjects and so on. And I guess that connection with land. And for me, the area of land that I'm going to be talking about here, oh, I've got the right thing, I think. Oops. That the one? Yeah. Nope. Ah, there we are. Okay. Yeah, the area of land that I'm talking about here is down at Findhorn, and you know it is where I you know spent my childhood. And there's a great sign out there saying "Private property, keep out," which meant that was the place to be. All right, and it's great because I went and studied ecology and did all that, and then teacher for 30 years and all that, and to be able to come back and do something is important. So here we go. Yeah, I mean, I think most of you, or maybe you don't know, Findhorn, amazing. The geomorphology of the area is quite amazing. This is the old bar here. And at one time, by the way, this is Findhorn Bay here. This is Berg Head, and over here Nairn. Between Berg Head and Nairn, we have this longshore drift creating these great big shingle banks there, and then there's sand on to the west that blew over here, creating this second largest dune system in Europe. And it was There's the famous storms in the 17th century, but this was our desert, if you like, here. And it's a huge area, was a huge area here. And this is the Findhorn Peninsula. This is the Findhorn village here. And many of you will know this as Culbin Forest, but it wasn't a forest until 1930s, and now it is covered in conifers. Notice here, this is where the Findhorn Peninsula is. There's open areas of sand. So what you've got here, just this tiny little remnant, it seems there. But what's important is that you've got a biodiversity hotspot. You know, the coasts are biodiversity hotspots, and you've got rare species in there because they're remnants from this different ecosystem that was there. And we manage, and we're just about to own about 50 hectares on this land here. Most of the land that we have is actually covered in gorse, and there are spreading trees, and we'll go back to that there. But there are areas of dune heath that are, they're important biodiversity habitats. And yeah, just different land management. We have a little bit down by the shore, but we've got an area of woodland. There's quite a lot of gorse and so on in here. We have been going for about 20 years in different guises, but became SCIO in 2015. First thing we did was go to the local community and see what they would like to see happen. And we've been guided along the way by various things, such as the Local Biodiversity Action Plan. Sean Reid, the local ecologist, put that together. And it's a really important tool, because we don't have unlimited, as we all don't have unlimited resources. We don't have an unlimited time, money, and so on. So actually to see what's special on the land is really, really important. And on our land we have this shingle, this dune heath habitat. Doesn't look much, but we're talking about over 200 species of lichen here. We're talking about over 400 species of moth on these sites. And yeah, they are the jewels for us in terms of what we look after. We have woodland, we have dry grassland as well. They're important habitats, and also the dune scrub. But this is actually the jewel in the crown for us. And this man we know, so this is Alan Watson Featherstone. He's been very important because he's a trustee of the Findhorn Dunes Trust, Findhorn Hinterland Trust. And Alan has a fascination with the small and the beautiful, and he's put on amazing exhibitions of just what's on the land. It's not about opening eyes, it's about opening minds as well. That's really important. But the other thing is also bringing that wealth from Trees for Life specialists that can come and look at the land, and actually to find the species that are special there. We haven't got, we haven't got them all there. We've got some of them that are only found in that place, or a couple of places in Scotland or Britain or Europe, and we call them our star species. And it's been really important to get specialists onto the land to actually see what is important here. And there are different species. This is actually a lichen. This is the felt mat lichen, and it's everywhere on our site. But it's only found. Well, it's not found many places. But amazing species there. I can't. I'm just giving you some idea of some of the things that we've got on our land here. This is you wouldn't expect there to be fungi growing in the sand, but this is important. The sandy earth tongue fungus, they are only found, I think, Alan, a couple of places in is it in Scotland or Britain or yeah, in Britain, yeah. Okay. Wonderful site. Big problems though, because yes, trees and gorse. People have been talking about planting trees. I was actually the project officer for the Buchan countryside group based at Adam Park. I think that was about 40 years ago or something like that. Yeah, planting trees. We all love planting trees. We all loved red squirrels. We all love this. But in some places, that's not the priority. And here we've got amazing habitat here, but the trees they are creating biomass there, they're creating shade, so the specialist species, they cannot survive in this situation here. This is quite interesting. Trees, wonderful. Within, that's less than, I think, 10 years, this is the same barrier here. Change happens, and if you were growing trees, you'd be smiling, but we're not. We have to do something different. This is actually at the Universal Hall. I grew up in the Park Eco Village, Findhorn, and have seen great change. There's a lot of marram grass out there. That's all covered in gorse and trees. Now, problem is that it's also a negative feedback. If the more trees, the more gorse there is, the less wind. You need wind. It's a part of bringing back the natural processes onto the land here. And there's been quite a lot of study done, particularly in the last 15 years. Down in, spent a lot of money in Wales. This is important. This dynamic Dune scapes manual. It has helped us in our thinking, because we've been wondering how do we do this, and we've got people out. We have over 200 paid up members there. People out to actually take back some of this. It's lodgepole pines, largely lodgepole pines. They actually seed more than the Scots pine and gorse, and this is quite a lot of work. And someone talked about getting local community involved with this. The asylum seekers from Elgin that were glad to get out, meet people from the local community, and give back to the environment there. So yes, we're actually taking the trees there. But there's only a certain amount you can do by hand, and then we have to bring in machinery. So this is a gorse basher there that actually mulches the gorse, and then taking off the organic matter on the top back to the sand. So what we look to do, what we're planning to do, and what we've started to do is taking a 3-hectare area of gorse right now, connecting different high-value habitats here. These nature corridors important, out to the Dune Heath out here as well. And we're starting with, this gives you the area. It's not huge, but it is significant what we are trying to do here. This was the area that we set out last year to look at, and we did a pilot project, and it actually turned out to be 0.8 hectares. We had to get into the big machines, 14-ton things, and so on. It looks destructive, but it is like resetting the habitat here. And again, gorse bashers, a couple of days on there to actually, the gorse is over 3 meters high here. And then you can see the clearing the area here. And then the next stage is actually to take not just the brash there, but all the organic matter and pile that up, and then create large pits and put that organic matter in there and cover it up with the sand. And then this is what we're left with. That was finished in November. This year we're doing a further 0.5 of a hectare. It was good to do it we were looking at the Nature Restoration Fund. We were into the next round, and then they ran out of money and said, no, we can't do it. So it may be quite good, because it's good to do it a small bit and see how it goes. You know, we had to get in specialist unexploded ordnance. We had to pay for that. Someone to sit. Well, he said he was like a coiled spring in his deck chair. But you know, it did feel a little bit funny to have that. But anyway, we managed to do this. And the thing is that resetting the landscape, it's not going to change overnight. It's not a short-term project. You know, it'll be 20 years, it'll be 40 years or whatever. But at least it provides the areas where these rarer species can survive. What is important is not just doing the project, but actually getting people involved. We have a partnership with the local school, Forest Academy. We've got some grant funding there, really, to get them involved in actually coming out and seeing what it takes to maintain prime and rare habitat. Actually, if just raising awareness is important, but if we get a few people involved later in their life, great. So it's important. And that's Heather there. She's a lichenologist and just spending time with the pupils there. And just that's us. All right. Okay. Thank you.
So, here's your opportunity to ask for questions. Natty.
I have a question about the Discovery Trail, if that's okay.
Oh, damn it, I thought I was going to go.
Don't worry. It's an easy one. I was just wanting to know about what sort of signage and infrastructure you installed to guide people along the nature trail. Like, how informed is this Discovery Trail, and how have you done that?
So we've got, we do have interpretation panels, and we've highlighted some of the highlighted species and different things that you can see, but kept it quite low level. And we do most of the interpreting through word of mouth and talking to people and having events and walks and things like that. But I was quite, and this was a personal thing to me really, is that I didn't want it to be a municipal park, so I didn't want too much signage. And we've also got some slate boards which the rangers wrote out with just little messages on about deer and nesting and things like that can be changed at any point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alison.
Hi, Nancy. I'm just wondering about the path that goes along beside the university, along the river.
On the campus side?
Yes, it's quite a lot of disrepair. Is that being repaired?
I think it will be at some point, yeah, because RGU own up to the riverside, isn't it? Yeah, so I mean, it will be at some point because it needs to be. Yeah.
Right. Yep. No, yeah.
A question for Jonathan. I think you were saying that the change to the site links back to when Culbin Forest was planted. So is that where the source of all the tree seeds came from, or were people planting it as well? I mean, how did it become quite so invaded?
Yeah, I mean, okay, the Culbin Forest, that has been a major change there, but there's also Wilkie's Wood, which is actually to the south of our site there, and from there the tree seeds and so on have spread, also within the village of Findhorn too. So You know, once you start building, you're slowing down wind speeds. Once you start planting trees and so on, you're slowing down wind speeds, and you're changing the natural environment there. It's amazing that it's actually been retained for so long, that coastal feature, the coastal features there. And it's not the only thing happening. You know, we've got the connections, for example, with the butterfly conservation doing work in Nairn, the East Beach in Nairn, the RSPB that are doing work on the Old Bar, and of course there's the Murray Firth partnership doing work around different parts of Murray. So it's not just the only thing happening, but trying to connect up with other areas there. And Sophie, it's been good to hear Sophie Ward just about the Murray and the nature networks and so on, and to be able to get some of this information to younger people in the schools, actually to have a demonstration. There's a worldwide biodiversity crisis, but it's what we do on our backyard, in our backyards, that matters. And to have a practical example that you can actually show people, okay, this is what it takes and this is why we're doing it. And if everyone looked after their backyards, the world would be a better place.
Absolutely. More questions? Nancy, can I ask you a question about Waterside Farm?
Yeah.
Did I understand it correctly that you're to re-wet that land area? You're going to pump
Yes.
to re-wet it? There's no option to allow it to re-wet naturally, then, is there?
The area on the west side isn't going to flood too much because it comes up from that eastern side, because that bit was then blocked off, and that's what was the reed beds and the wetlands before. So that's the idea then, to bring the water into where it was previously.
Right. Will you need to continue to pump over time, or?
I think long-term plans is then actually to kind of remove the blockade that was then there, so to bring in that secondary channel again. But we're nowhere near that point at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Anyone else?
Can I ask Sam a quick question? Did you need planning permission for your signage?
For the whole Discovery Trail, we put a plan through to Murray Council.
And that included the signage, I presume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of it. Some of it is movable.
Yeah.
I don't think it technically comes under planning. But
doesn't.
but yeah, it was part of the plan, and actually because we made it quite difficult, or I made it quite difficult for us, in that we made it an all ability trail, and so there was so much red tape that we had to go through with gradients and widths, and I mean you would have noticed from the nature hide that we put in, there's like a huge great big ramp that goes up to it, but just to get the incline down, we had to put that in. And so I think the signage kind of got a little bit lost.
Right.
But
that's
in
fine.
that. That's
fine.
perfect.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Just on that point, I think it's amazing that you got that all abilities path. When I have my father-in-law over, I find it very difficult to go into nature with my parents-in-law because he has a scooter that he uses. How you said that you'd increased it from 2 kilometres. How big is it now?
It's not. It probably is now about 3. I've not been out and measured it properly yet, but there is the trail, and then it takes you up onto the new Distillery Road, and then brings you out in a circular walk really. But the new path then will take you up to from Inverharrock. I don't know whether you know the outline of it, but from Inverharrock up to Bridgend almost. So yeah, it's stretching a little bit, gradually getting there. But yeah, it was important to have the all ability trail to make sure that anybody could use it really, and they do. We've got a resident who used it every day for his dog, and then he took seriously ill, needed to use the mobility scooter. Because he used it every day, now parks it at our bothy at the beginning of the trail so that he doesn't have to keep taking it home. So
It's a garage, eh?
car park.
Sorry, I've got one first. Martin, I'll come back.
Both a question to Fiona about an alert for something. There was a lot of talk early on about charisma and selling our views to a wider world. There's a wonderful book written by a lady called Catherine Hayhoe called Saving Us, written in 2020. Catherine is a climate change professor from Canada who lives in Texas. And as you can imagine, getting climate change across to Texas oil barons is quite an interesting thing. She's done an enormous amount of work around the world. She was on the IPCC for a number of years. She does communication and has gone with communication scientists and so on to teach people how to communicate with people who are diametrically opposed to your position. It's worth reading the book. It's called Saving Us by Catherine Hayhoe. Well worth having. Fiona, it's a question to you. Is there a strategic background to where you're going with your development of Sma Wids? Or is it you're just hoping that landowners will come to you and you can develop it from there?
At the moment, it's a case of landowners coming to us. So from the 6 landowners that we had as part of the pilot, they've already, everybody speaks to everybody else. So that's already built momentum there. And we already know of a number of other landowners within that sort of immediate beginnings of a network who are interested if we're able to roll it out. I guess we're seeing this 2 years as almost a sort of second phase of the pilot. And so, where it goes from there and how we work that out in terms of what the uptake is and how we screen what are appropriate sites, it's all part of the still working through that really. We are called the Aberdeenshire Sma Wids scheme because although it's restricted to Buchan at the moment, we want to be able to widen it out further. So.
I think there was one over here first.
Thank you. I also wanted to give a shout out for Sam and the Cabrach Trust because not only have they been involved in biodiversity projects, they've taken the whole of the circular economy in a way and looked at how they can regenerate a community that was very, very small indeed from what it was at the beginning of the century. I'm speaking of the 20th century. They've done that and they've linked in a lot of artistic and cultural and heritage projects. So it makes the whole community alongside the biodiversity. And I think projects are one of the ones is the Tweed project that you did as well, that linked into the colours of the biodiverse environment that you were creating. So it's a big shout out to that and how successful that you've been because there has been a security of funding there as well. Everyone's speaking about how we need to make sure that we fund these projects properly. And I think that's one of the big questions of the future, that where does that come from when we can't keep asking broke local councils, which are part, Scottish Government, and maybe look towards the big businesses and where the profits are being made within our environments to say perhaps there should be more contributing back in to create a sustainable environment for everybody.
Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah, so I have kind of a question for Fiona, which is you designed your scheme thinking about what provision was already out there and identifying a gap in this Sma Wids. And I just wondered if you had any thoughts on what approaches people can take to help identify those gaps in what the provision is or what projects are being run and how, if there's any kind of thing you found from that form of experience or that you think that could be kind of applied in other ways.
I guess we started it off with a round table discussion with a huge range of folks from all sorts of different aspects, and we were looking at a particular geographic area, which maybe made that easier because you're looking at specific concerns of that part of Buchan. But just being able to have the time to just hear different viewpoints and, you know, the existing schemes that were happening, but also the problems that people had with them or the things that they found positive with them. And yeah, I mean, that was absolutely, it was like an open-ended question, and I guess because it came from the king, there was an instruction to come. You know, not everybody gets that sort of power of influence to bring people around the table, but that really did help because it meant people had time without any particular goal. You know, it was just a chance to listen and communicate. So if we can build that in somehow to allow those networks to exist, and you know, I think as you said a minute ago there about, you know, working together and all these different projects and learning from each other, then if we can build that in through these networks, then that's hugely beneficial.
There's been a lot of talk of tree tubes this afternoon, and a million over the AWPR is just staggering. In the short term, yes, they protect the trees. In the longer term, do they cause damage? Do they decay? Anyone?
Yes, I can tell you they do. There is like compostable ones made of fungi as well.
Yeah, there's a huge range of different ones available now. I mean, they're prohibitively expensive. But yeah, we looked into it for the Sma Wids in terms of whether we could use some of the compostable ones or the ones that are made of wood or cardboard. Ultimately, for the pilot project, we decided to stick with plastic ones because they were small numbers and they were being planted by landowners who could then monitor them and remove them and hopefully reuse them. But yeah, I mean, it's all manner of problems that happen with the trees, and actually, you know, sweating out trees or, you know, suffocating them with it, it's not ideal.
I think anyone that live anywhere near the AWPR will be asking the same question. Is every time I drive by one, I just think I'll just go in and take them all out. I don't know what to do with them.
When I say they decay, they don't disappear.
No.
No, they just turn into microplastics. Yeah.
The Scottish Wildlife Trust has a tree nursery in Riccarton, and it's taking in and recycling tree guards from other projects. But I've got enough at the moment.
I've got about 10,000 if you want.
Discussions that we've been having locally is about this issue is maybe doing away with the tree guards and just overplanting, which is, I think, less costly anyway, and going with the assumption that we will lose some. Obviously it's dependent on if there's lots of deer in the area, then you probably do need them. But where there isn't a huge prevalence of deer, maybe taking the risk. And certainly that's what we're going to try and do in our pilot is just plant without the protection and see what happens and learn from it. I think we've started to feel that maybe the tree guards have been slightly over-egged in certain circumstances, not all circumstances, but it does feel like they're maybe seen as the only solution sometimes.
Any other questions? Ewan?
My question really, most of the speakers today and a lot of the questions today have revolved around the importance of collaboration, working together and so on. And I've been sitting here thinking, well, how are we actually going to make that happen? And I was looking just now, I know for example that NESCAN has a project map, and people are encouraged to put their projects on that map so that somebody can go and have a look at it and say, they're doing the same sort of thing as we're doing. We'll maybe have a chat with them. But a lot of the projects we've heard about today don't feature on the NESCAN map. So that's my question is, I'm 73, I'm not going to last for an awful lot longer. Can we please have a mechanism for actually making sure that more collaboration actually works on the ground and we don't just keep talking about the importance of collaboration?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm here, to meet all of you and to make sure, yes, there needs to be a mechanism, as you say, and it's good to just look outside and see, just what is going on. And
but how do you find out what's going on in Angus, for example? You know, and send me the sand dune systems down there. It's relatively easy to look over the fence and see what your neighbours are doing. but it's for me, I live on D side. How do I find out what's going on up in Buchan and so on? Even closer than that.
There is a map system called Alice, which a lot of different projects across Scotland are contributing to. So it stands for a local information system for Scotland.
Right.
And it's not conservation specific.
No.
It's not anything specific.
No,
it's projects.
It's action
important
specific.
projects.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And through that you can get information about people you wish to collaborate with.
Well, that
and then it would be up to you.
even publicising something like that would be good. I'd never heard of Alice before.
They lost funding for a couple of years and they're just back up and running. So we've started to create a map through our Climate Action Network in Renfrewshire, which feeds into Alice, and then that is distributed all over. Most of the people that contact us will just be from Renfrewshire, Glasgow kind of area, but it will be the same for every area. The more you put into it, the more you can get out of it.
Yeah. I think as well, like the reason why we invited Lucia and Joa, there's the regional hub network, and we're trying really hard to make sure that that network across the whole of Scotland is really supporting each other and connecting in and then sharing that information outward. But again, it's a growing network, and you'll probably be able to say more about the wider network. But
I mean, so you're right. I would love to have everybody contribute. Just go onto our website, pop in your details of your project around in our area, and yes, please, thank you, Ewan, because we would like to make it more projects. But what we're trying to do as a regional hub system, and there is hubs throughout the whole of Scotland now, is have, and this is something to be built within the next year, a website which showcases every single hub, but also then, in time, will then put a whole Scotland map of what's happening. And what we're trying to do also is create within the hub system like area specialisms that people collaborate around to increase that kind of partnership working. Within obviously this area, we've got NESBiP. I mean, NESCAN's trying to develop peer-led networks, and whether it's circular economy, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's transport, etc. But where there is already existing networks like NESBiP, that's what will help support. So I guess the question is, when it comes to gaining peer support, what's the best way of doing it? Because generally what we find within NESCAN is just these kind of places where you hear and then you get chatting is where it's at. That's what our members meetings are about. So hopefully then you can see people, because we do them online because it's a big area. And we have our gathering once a year, which is coming up in May the 10th. So join if you're not, and then come along. Is this kind of meeting and hearing, and then, oh, that's a brilliant idea. I want to do what you do, and that's really the power of it. But then how else can we do it apart from that? And that would be really good to get some kind of thoughts about that. Danielle.
Okay, so there is the Scottish Climate Action Network as well, SCAN, which are that collective of all of the hubs as well. So there's that, and they have a platform called Vive, V-I-V-E, which is like a Facebook for us. So that's a connection portal, and there's communities within there which are carbon literacy or circular economy. So you can go on there and find other people that have interest in the same thing that you are interested in and share resources. So there's those.
Thanks for all that. I think Ewan's made it. It's a really, really important point Ewan's made, and we really need to work on that. But obviously, some resources are out there to start, but we need to do more, that's for sure. Because everybody needs to know where to go, what to look for, how to collaborate, as Ewan says. So,
can I say, if anybody comes up with a way of doing that, I will personally give them £100 to get.
Right, let's go. First one.
It'd be much more than £100 to fix that.
Okay, but how many people are there in this room? If they all give £100, that would get things going.
Very true.
Resources that are needed.
I'm giving my time, not my money.
Right, okay, I'm going to wrap up now. So thanks ever so much, everybody. I think this idea of having a joint seminar with NESBiP and NESCAN has worked really well. I think it's tremendous. I really enjoyed it. I think, despite the fact that there's a biodiversity crisis and climate change is happening at an ever-increasing rate, there's a good deal of optimism in this room, and a lot of energy going towards how we can do something about it. I mean, as people have said, you know, we can't just let things happen. As Jonathan just said at the end there, you know, you've got to do stuff in your. You can do it. We can all do it in our backyards or wider projects. There's a lot we can do, and we just have to convince a lot of other people, and we do seem to be able to do that quite well. We need to convince a lot of other people that they can contribute to that too. So I think my take from today's really wonderfully interesting set of talks is that all of those great projects are at different scales, and you know, some of them are smaller, some and the drivers behind them are quite different too. I mean, some of them are research projects, some are all to do with the community, some are citizen science, which is one of my favourite things, is citizen science, as a lot of people know. And what links them all together is that sheer amount of enthusiasm. There are people there. Every one of these projects has got an enthusiast behind it, and I think that's what's really come over to me. I think that what Alison said right at the beginning about get your vision together and don't worry about the barriers, and you know, I think that's really important. I think a lot of people do think, I don't know how I'm going to do that, and there's going to be barriers, but tackle those as you go. Get your vision together first. This is where I want to be, and this is what I want to do. And so, having said all that, I think I just want to thank all the speakers for a brilliant day. Really, really interesting. I want to thank Abby particularly and the NESCAN staff for. There's a huge amount of work gone into organising this, as I'm sure you appreciate, and a lot of nerve-wracking parts of and fixing speakers, you know. So I think it's and thank you all for coming and contributing. I think it's been a great day. So thanks a lot.